Hello, and welcome to Moving the Needle on Wicked Problems. I think we can all agree that this last year has been truly wicked for us. Individuals have been lost, communities have been in despair, families have been isolated from each other, and at times there seems to be no end in sight. It is precisely at these times that we need enlightened, compassionate leadership to lift us up.
Yeah, absolutely, Senator. Excellent and capable leadership plays a pivotal role in driving success in our lives and also success with any organization, business, or institutions. Leaders can be dynamic, exciting, and inspiring to others, pushing people to take action. Leadership transforms a mere possibility into a reality. And during these tough times, it's so crucial that we have good and effective leaders.
Well said, Paul. And we have exactly one such incredibly strategic and yet compassionate leaders on our show today. I can't think of a better person to help us understand leadership in difficult times than my colleague, Senator Chantal Petitclerc. Let's get to the interview. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Moving the Needle on Wicked Problems. There has rarely been a more wicked time than these times. The pandemic, the fight for racial justice, climate change, gender inequity, the search for reconciliation and truth with the indigenous peoples, just to name a few. And it is precisely in times like this that we need leadership voices to lift us up. Our guest on the podcast today, Senator Chantal Petitclerc, is precisely such a leadership voice. She has been an exemplary role model and leader throughout her career. Senator Petitclerc is an internationally renowned athlete who has won gold medals in the Paralympic Games, Olympic Games, and Commonwealth Games, and was appointed as Team Canada's chef de mission for the Rio Paralympic Games. Senator Petitclerc was awarded the Lou Marsh Memorial Trophy for Canadian Athlete of the Year and was inducted into the Canadian Paralympic Hall of Fame. A tireless advocate for the contributions of people with disabilities, Senator Petitclerc has played an important role in building a more inclusive Canada. And she is, of course, my good friend and colleague in the Senate. Thank you, Senator, for taking the time to speak with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
We are delighted to have you. So I want to reflect on the immediate past as we start. You have just come through a very stressful leadership experience, as I have observed, as sponsor of C7, which is the extension of the assisted dying regime. Can you share with us the high and low points of this experience, and perhaps coming from that, leadership lessons that you can share with us?
Yes, my experience as sponsor of Bill C7, the medical assistance in dying, expanding medical assistance in dying to Canadians who are not near death, has been, it's been a very interesting experience from my perspective as a senator, as an individual, because not only was it a challenge to begin with, because medical assistance in dying will never be an easy conversation, and it shouldn't be. So to begin with, it had to be a big challenge for me as a person and as a senator and as a leader. But then this sponsorship of Bill C7 lasted longer than I thought it would last. And then it happened in a situation of a pandemic, which no one expected. And then from a personal perspective, it also happened in a homeschooling experience because I am the mother of a 7-year-old. So when you put everything together, it's been something I had never gone through before. Well, like many Canadian anyway, but as a leader, it really challenged me in an organizational perspective, in a leadership perspective also, because when you think about leadership, you think about relationship, discussion, talking with people. And now all of a sudden, we all ended up in this virtual world where nobody expected that, and not everybody had the same type of experience, expertise, and it just became a completely different sponsorship experience in my part. I would say that the high part was that it really showed how the Senate and the senators, individuals, were able to jump in making it happen, you know, virtually, with being more flexible, with being available, and of course the other part of that is that everybody had to go through working with Bill C7 in very different situation, whether as individual, you could see, and everybody's been talking about this pandemic tiredness, and some individuals are a little bit more edgy, a little bit more tired. Everybody has to deal with different home situations, whether the senators themselves or their office and the staff. So there was a lot of intangible but very real aspect to it, and and it was not an easy bill to begin with. So um, I think what I'm taking from this is that when you are a leader, you need to be, I'm going to be very simple here, but there is you know, the content, so the content of the bill, but also what I would call the container. And in this case, they both were very challenging. And so we had to deal with making sure that the very, very serious and important issues were discussed, debated, taken into consideration. But what I call the container, the Zoom challenges, the different individuals dealing with their different situations, I had to take that into consideration. And I have to say that I'm quite, I am very impressed of the work that was done in the Senate in this bill, even if it was not easy. When I look back and I take a step back and I analyze the committee, the debate, the questions, it was tough. It was never complacent, but always respectful and productive.
So as I watched you in particular through the passage, the journey of extension of assisted dying, I noticed two qualities about you. One, your resilience. You stay with it, you don't give up. And two, your compassion. And your personal leadership story, I think, plays a lot into this. And sometimes, you know, there's a single event that propels you into a leadership position or into uncharted territory. Can you share such a moment with us?
I think that is a very interesting question, and one of the very simple answer, for sure, it has to be the challenge of my accident. And even if I was very young, and I don't even know exactly how to articulate it, but for sure it has to. It changed my life, because all of a sudden, and I became paraplegic. You know, I was on the farm. I had this barn door fell on me, and you wake up and your life, even if you're only 13, your life is completely different. You have not prepared for it. You have not wanted it. It's out of your control. But it's there, and it's there to stay, and you know it's there to stay. So I think this really formed who I was going to become as a person, but also later on as an athlete, and maybe as a leader. Although I think we all are leaders at some level, but I think it did have a very, very strong impact, because it forced me to that journey of resilience, but also of living with a difference, and a difference that everybody sees and that you don't choose, but it's there, and you have to face it day to day to day. So I think this played a big role. And then if I can continue on that, I think as a high performance athlete, I had some of those wake-up call moment. One of them, I remember being in 2002 in Paris, having the worst race of my life, 800-meter, finishing last, being very destroyed, and because I wanted to win, and you know, my sponsor was there for many reasons. And I remember having this, you know, life important conversation with my coach, who said to me, because I was finding excuses, and he said to me at one point, he said, "Well, can we all agree that you just choked under pressure?" I have to say my coach is himself a Swedish high performance speed skater, and sometimes they're not the best with human skills in terms. So that was his very, but you know, and then he said, "This happened. Do you want to get there? And if so, we are going to need to change, learn, and grow. And change is hard, but I think it is possible when you make that decision." And this very simple experience really set me on a road to being able to always being very honest with myself and say to myself, yes, I choked. Yes, this was a bad move. And then try to grow and learn from it. So to me, this was two very important moments.
And during those difficult times, I mean, during your accident, but also you just mentioned your coach sort of, I don't know, you know, sort of laying it on the line for you. What have you over the years in those experiences have looked to others for inspiration and strength? Has there been other examples of individuals that have helped you and pushed you and guided you and inspired you to the heights that you achieved?
There are too many. There are too many to feel this. I could fill the next 2 hours with who inspired me. I mean, I think there are the classics, the heroes. Ever since I was young, but even now, I see myself as a sponge when it comes to role model. I grab everything I see that inspires me. I'm not shy of it. I'm not, you know, and there is, for me, one of the famous role model, two of them. One is Simone de Beauvoir, famous feminist, French feminist, you know, the third, le troisième sexe and all of that. She inspired me at so many. I've read every single thing, the journals, the war journals, the books, the everything. And then is Emil Zatopek, is a great athlete also from Prague, but then there's so many others, and Senator Umidvar, you know that I never hesitate. One time I take the phone, I need an advice. Can you help me with that? How would you deal with that? How I've done it with C7, I've done it in the Senate as an athlete, and it's amazing how people will be willing to help you. And I never feel, you know, like it's a weakness. If I have something that I see you and you have this strength and I want it, I will take my phone and call you and ask you about it with no shame, with no, you know, like, and I think people should do more of that, because we do have the more formal, you know, mentorship program, and those are very, very good. But I always tell even the younger women, like, you would be surprised how many people will just say, yes, I'll go for coffee with you, even if they don't know you, because I gained something from it. So I've had a lot of people inspiring me, and the Senate is a good example, because when I got there, as a former athlete, as a person with disability, I never hesitate. And in fact, I had many of those coffees and lunches just because I wanted to soak up experience and knowledge.
And has that sort of helped you? I mean, you know, thinking about the Paralympics, thinking about sport, there's a lot of challenges there. There's hierarchy, there's politics, there's money. So were those sort of experiences and reaching out to people, did that help you kind of stand up for your values in a very tough and difficult sort of ecosystem that sport and the Paralympic Games and the Olympic Games are?
Sport, you learn a lot from sport, and then in general. And then you learn a lot from high performance sport, because, you know, once you've been in a stadium with 91,000 people and you've got 16 seconds to show what you want to do, and you want it, you know, you want that medal, you've been thinking about it every single day for 20 years. And so the pressure that you need to learn to live with and cope with. And yeah, you know, I remember very, very, very precisely being on the start of a 100-meter, and your heartbeat is so loud that you hear it, and it's fast, and so that type of pressure and adrenaline, I think you take it with you after, and so many other things, you know, goal setting, having this clear idea of where you want to go and how you're going to deconstruct that plan to make it happen is something that I bring to my work in the Senate, in saying, okay, this is what I want to accomplish. How are we going to make, and how can we quantify that? And so those are the things that I bring with me, and being able to, I guess, face adversity. And we were talking about Bill C7, and it was not easy all the way, and I had to stay firm on my belief. And I think it has to start with believing in what you're doing. That's always been important to me. Sometimes people ask me, as an athlete, you know, what are you the most proud of? And of course they think you're going to talk about the medals, but I always try to go back to say that for me, and even to this day, the measure of my success is being able to do what I want to do while staying who I want to stay, you know, while being who I want to be with my own values. And when you can achieve both, to me, this is still the measure of my success.
So, Senator, you talked about, you know, your past as a high performance athlete in an elite sport, and I want to try and map that experience to the experience both you and I have as senators. In a sense, our work in the Senate is high performance as well, and we're driven by results. Politics is about winning, as is sports. So can you share with us how your lessons in sport can be translated into your work in the Senate, or into our work in the Senate?
When I first, like many others, I suppose, when I first arrived in the Senate, I was very puzzled on how I would be able to, with what I had, and it was not lack of confidence, because I knew I had something to bring from my experience as a former athlete, as a, you know, sport and wellness advocate, as a person with disability, but I was very puzzled on how am I going to take that and give it, you know, meaning and purpose in the Senate. But then, looking back, and it's been a few years now, I think that there's a lot of things that you learn as an athlete, and those are sometimes basic, but they are important, you know, facing adversity, being able to choose exactly what you want to do, and then draw a map on how to make it happen. And I'm not saying sport is the only way to learn that, but also making sure that you have a good team that's going to take you to where you want to go. I think this is all a few things that I've learned through sport. And then, of course, coping with stress, because there is a lot of stress, adrenaline, pressure in the Senate, because we want to do something, we want to make it happen, and it's not easy. There is a lot of opposition. There's a lot of different, you know, debates and games being played sometimes, and you know what you want to do, but but this is all happening. And so being able to take a step back, take a deep breath, deal with that pressure, deal with that stress, I think this is very helpful. And I think also athletes know that you need to put the time and you need to do the work. And this is something that I'm still doing in the Senate, because I know that, you know, the learning curve for us arrive for me and you know, a lot of the new senators arriving in the Senate as non-politician and non-legislators, that learning curve was the steepest that I've ever had to face. And I think a lot of us also, one of the big challenge that we had is we came from an environment where we were the best at what we were doing, and that's nice, right? And then you get in the Senate and it's like, no, you're not, you're not the best at this. Just like deal with it and learn. And it is a very humbling moment. And it needs to, you know, you need to be strong to stay, to think and to realize that, yes, I have something to bring, but I need to learn this journey and this content as a senator to be able to bring the rest. And I think I'm slowly getting there, but I'm also realistic that you know, the senator that I am now is not the one that I will be in 10 years, and that's fine, you know. And I think one of the lesson is that, you know, you have to be the best that you can be today, and sometimes that's okay, you know.
I can certainly share with that sense of, or that experience of humility that we quickly gained in the Senate, where we were not the best of the best, but we were a member of a Senate, and both you and I have had a steep learning curve. But I'm not going to let you off with humility at this point. Mm-hmm. I want to ask you to share with us, and getting back to sports and your advocacy for the disability community, in particular disabled athletes. I want you to share with us how you moved the needle for disabled athletes in Canada.
I'm always, it's not about being humble. It's because a lot of people have, but yes, I think I did play my part. I don't know how deliberate it was. I think sometimes I find myself, again, C7, good example. I find myself in the middle of a fight without really knowing it's going to be that big of a fight, but also without fear of that fight. And that happened a lot when I was a Paralympic athlete, because I was not a pioneer. I think I was in maybe the second wave where we had the Paralympic Games, we had some sort of organization. But I remember a few times I had to fight some sports federation. I had to even refuse awards because I thought it was not fair. And it was never easy. I think I have to say that when I had to fight for recognition of the value of a Paralympic medal, of the value of Paralympic sport, I never did it just because I liked to be in the center of a controversy. I did it because I thought this was the right thing to do. This was the right thing to do for me, for my sport, for the younger athletes coming up. But there was also some times where things started to change. And I remember at Commonwealth Games when in Australia, Commonwealth Games in Australia, when the team, they had some Paralympic events included at the Commonwealth Games, like, because Commonwealth Games has always been the best inclusive movement. And they told me, you're going to be the flag bearer for the opening ceremony. And I have to say, I did not expect that at all. And there were so many great athletes, Olympic athletes, Paralympic athletes. And this was to be the very first time in an inclusive event that a Paralympic athlete would be chosen as a flag bearer. And to this day, I'm very proud that Canada was the first one to do that, you know, because it does mean something. It does show something. And it doesn't mean the fight is over, but it does show something. And I remember thinking, well, first, it was a great joy, it was a great honor, but it was also a great symbol because on that team, I remember when they had the flag bearer announcement and they announced me, and I thought, some of these young athletes, you know, gymnasts, what do they know about Paralympic sport? And in fact, right after the announcement, they gathered around me and they wanted a picture, and then they posted it. And then I thought, you know, this is how change happens. Sometimes it happens with very difficult fight and confrontation, and sometimes it happens with positive change. It happens with an organization choosing me, and then those gymnasts posting me to all the other gymnasts in Canada. And I think both are necessary. I think sometimes the fight and the aggressive fight and the conflict are helping move that needle, but it needs to be accompanied with positive stories. And I think both play their part. And I've had the privilege to live both. I've had the privilege when I won the Lou Marsh. I remember my dad, you know, winning the Lou Marsh Award, which for those who are not in the sport world is the biggest sport prize you can get in Canada, and it is decided by journalists, sport journalists from every province. So it is the expert who say this year, men, women, professional, amateur, Paralympic, Olympic, you are the Lou Marsh Award recipient. It's huge. And then when I got it as the first Paralympian to get it, I remember my dad calling me and you know, saying, "I can't believe you won that," because some hockey player won it the year before, and to him. But this was huge, you know, and it was huge for Canada again to give that prize to a Paralympic athlete before other countries. So I think those positive experiences do play a big role in moving that needle as well.
You know, we are going through a pandemic now. You know, I was actually fascinated when you said about the pressure of being at the starting line and the stress and all of that sort of stuff. And one of the things that people do to manage their stress, manage their anxiety, is to do physical activity. You know, either through sport or just physical activity, you know, outside their house. And you've often talked about how, you know, we are getting to be a sedentary people, especially young kids. You know, young people aren't necessarily taking up sports as they much or being as physically active. And then you add on to that this pandemic that has essentially told everyone to stay indoors and don't do anything. I mean, that's evolved a little bit now where you can, you know, go out and get physical activity. But what do you think in general needs to be done to encourage young people to be physically active, to encourage them to use physical activity to deal with the everyday emotions that are difficult that everyone has to deal with, anxiety, stress, and all that sort of issues?
I think physical activity has to be part of the recovery of this pandemic, not only for kids, but for everybody. And of course, people will say, yeah, of course, you're saying that you're a former athlete, but it is, you know, it is evidence-based. It is more and more evidence-based. And I find it interesting that in Canada, somehow, you know, and that's good. Like we think we're better than we are in that part, but when we look at the numbers, we're not that good. You know, we're not doing so well in terms of being physically active, adults and especially kids. And now we're looking at this pandemic, and it's even I mean, I'm going to say it's a tragedy because I think it is a tragedy. I've seen it how, you know, for very valuable reason, we had to cut organized sports for the kids. We've had to cut recess visits because we want to keep the safe bubbles, and that's all good. But then again, I look at different countries who came up with different solutions, like well, let's build the classroom outside. It's cold. Well, who cares if it's cold? Like some countries have done that. They've been very audacious. I think sometimes we lack being, thinking outside the cliche box. And I see it in different countries, and it really frustrates me, because I'm like, why can we not be audacious? Why can we not go further? Why can we not, take risk, not safety risk, but try different things? And there's some very interesting movement in some of the Nordic countries and in Denmark in what they call like forest class, where kids just, and in some Asian countries as well. I'm like, well, this pandemic certainly would be the best time to start that. And not only we're not doing it, we're not even thinking about it. We're not even planning for it. And to me, that is very sad. I think what we're going to find via this through this pandemic and the recovery, because it's been now over a year, and we're not done yet. Let's be honest, we're not done yet. And I find that everybody, if we're honest with ourselves, it's tough. It's tougher than we think. It has an impact on our well-being, on our stress level. And even if we're aware of that, even if we're, educated and we take measures, it does have an impact. I see it, and people tell me about it. And so physical activity will be, I think, I think it will be one of the answer to get back into being strong as individual and as country. And I hope that we don't miss this opportunity to say, well, let's not go back to exactly what we were, but why not do more? Why not, make sure our kids are outside more often? There are so many things that we can do that sometimes are not so expensive. I've read in Australia, for example, that the schools have teamed up with the parks, the municipal parks, to have those safe bubbles to, in fact, let the schools use the municipality parks. And I'm like, wow, why are we not doing that anyway, pandemics or not? Like, why are our kids not taking, phys ed in the municipal, parks? And so there are a lot of things that we can do, and I'm hoping that we take this opportunity. What I find challenging is, as a senator, I would love to play a very active role on that, and I'm still struggling to figure out, because a lot of it has to do with provincial competency, as we know. And we've seen it in this pandemic. Some provinces, kids never really stopped doing organized sports. Some provinces, it's completely stopped. And it's really hard to figure out why, for once. But it's very difficult for me as a senator to really grab an actionable plan, because it's one thing to be a spokesperson, but you want to be able to have some actionable impact on that. And I'm still frustrated because I'm not quite sure how I can make that happen.
I mean, I'll have to say, physical activity has helped me get through the pandemic, just to being able to do sports either outside with my son or, any sort of sports. And I've taken up a few sports myself that I hadn't done before. But I wanted to ask you about another difficult question, because, Bill C-7 was a difficult issue. You've talked about your experience with the Paralympics and having to deal with that and the Olympic movement. We're coming into another Olympic Games, and it's the Olympic Games are going to be, there's already calls for the 2022 Winter Olympics that are going to be hosted in Beijing to be moved, because of what's happening with the Uyghurs in China. And so I wanted to, we wanted to get your sort of perspective on what you think should be done, because let me just give a little bit of my sort of thought on this, is that for the athletes, they've been working for years to have that moment. But then there are other bigger, political issues that are involved in that. How do you sort of deal with both of those issues?
I've been thinking about that a lot, in fact, because as you know, some athletes have taken position on it. There was a co-sign letter saying, not, not cancel the games, but make them happen somewhere else. And it is so difficult. From a personal perspective, I will never say cancel the games because I mean, I was in Beijing in 2008, and although it was definitely not to the level of human rights infringement that it is now, it still was not perfect, right? We can all agree on that. And even at that time, there was discussion on, you're going to go there, and I remember when they built the Beijing stadium and village, there was a lot of population displacement, and I was there, and I had the best games and memory and performance of my life. I know also that these games had a huge impact on persons with disability in China. I know that firsthand because of the investment, and because, let's be honest, in 2008 and even now, being a person with a disability in China was not good news. And so these Paralympic Games in specific have a huge side effect and impact. So, but I think what my position is on that is that it has to come from the International Olympic Committee and the National Olympic Committees, who need to have some sort of criteria. For example, years ago, you could bid for an Olympic game without even mentioning the Paralympic Games, and people did not mention it, to be honest. It was some sort of an afterthought. And then after a while, it was like, no, if you're going to bid as a city for the Olympic Games, make sure that you have a Paralympic bid plan that is strong. And now it's part of the understanding that if a city is bidding for Olympic, they take into consideration Paralympic. Maybe the next step would be that if you're bidding for the Olympic, you need to make sure that the country that is bidding uphold some values and standards in terms of human rights, because that's what you're fighting for the Olympics. But I think this has to come from the leadership of the Olympic Committee internationally, but maybe the National Olympic Committee, Canada, other countries, have to say, okay, we are member of your organization. Make sure that, when we have cities and countries that bid, they answer, you have a checklist, and that's how I would go with it. But there is a lot of politics and there is a lot of money involved. So I don't know how far my idea would go, but that's how I think it should go.
You're absolutely right, Senator. We as members of many international fora, we need to wear our values. We can't impose them on other jurisdictions, but we can certainly move the needle in the way that you're suggesting. So I want to get back to leadership, and many leaders or people with opinions are not necessarily leaders, I believe. They may be experts, but they're not leaders. One of the key qualities of a leader is accepting that leadership is not just about being right, or in fact, not at all about being right. It's about listening to others, about trying to craft a consensus, as you're trying to suggest here. How should we listen to others? Because I've noticed that you're very, very good at listening to others, and you don't do it just sort of a pro forma way. You're actually quite authentic about it. So what's the secret sauce?
I don't think I have it yet, to be honest. I want it, but I don't have the secret sauce. But one time I read, first I really don't see myself as a leader. I think I happen to be in position of leadership sometimes, either, I don't think it's by accident, but it's by conviction. It's like, for example, C7, I believe in access to medical assistance in dying. So when they ask me, I'm like, yeah, sure. I believe in it. I think it's the right thing. I think it's so then I say yes, and then I become in a position of leadership, but it never comes by, I want to lead something and let's make it happen. And one time, so I'm very uneasy about that kind of, and I don't see myself as as a leader sometimes, because we still have this image of a leader being in a position of authority. And of course, maybe it comes from a bit of a masculine cliche of leadership that is changing, but it's changing slowly. And one time I read a book from the University of Sherbrooke that was defining different types of leadership. And one was, of course, the classic, and one was more the collaborative, and one was more a bit of the hero leader that inspires others to follow. And I thought that was interesting. And it really kind of inspired me to say, okay, maybe I'm not the loud one. I'm not the one that talks a lot in meetings. I'm not the one that tries to push too much, but maybe I can lead, or I can make things happen, even if this is not who I am and who I want to be. And so I think you're right that I do like to give space, either when, with this bill, or even in committee as chair. And I do like to give space to individuals, to their ideas, their questions, their conviction, because I think it is important. And I think that it is more complicated to do it this way sometimes. It does take more time. But in the end, I think the results are just better, more richer. And I do believe in that. But I've seen that the downside of this is that some people interpret that collaborative approach as lack of confidence, because we're still used to leadership being a little louder, a little more louder. And so when you come with a leadership position that is not like that, I've seen it a few times that people will misinterpret it as lack of confidence. And so it happened a couple of times where I had to say, no, I know exactly what I want to do. And so it's been a very interesting learning process to find myself. And also because I come from a very individual environment as an athlete, and then, as a coach, or even as a chef de mission. And this is very different type of work in the Senate when, so I'm still learning how to keep that style that is important to me, but also making sure that people don't maybe, I don't know, I have a cat situation here.
I think you underplay your own impact, but I take the point that you make, that you have a certain, that leaders should have modesty, but they should have conviction. So my final question is perhaps a difficult one, because anyone who is a leader knows and experiences that when you put yourself out in a leadership position, you are a target for all kinds of other people. And leadership brings its own crown of thorns, so to say. And with the advent of social media, I think it's fair to acknowledge that you and I both have been victims of social media trolls. How do you, I don't think you can do anything about it because social media is free space, but how do you mentally deal with it so that it doesn't crush you for more than a moment?
Yes.
So
social media, I mean, negative social media experience has been very difficult for me. I have to be honest with that. I think, because as a former gold medalist, in general, everybody loves you. So sometimes I think it's karma bringing back the balance, because for the first 20 years of my life, I had good job, bravo. And then the first time I experimented with very strongly negative social media response was when I was sponsoring the plain packaging tobacco bill. And vaping bill, because of course there's some very strong opinion on that. And C7 strangely was even worse, and I'm using worse as that's exactly what I want to say. And it really took me by surprise, to be honest, that it was so aggressive, so personal. And social media is one thing, but my office got, overwhelmed by organizations being very, very aggressive. And so I guess there's two things with that. Like personally, I need to really work on not letting it get to me, because sometimes, and one day I'm like, okay, I've got 3 people saying those very, very nasty personal things about me, but I've got, 15,000 followers, and the rest of them are quite okay, apparently. But the problem is the 3 or the 1 bad comment can ruin your day, even if you've got 5 positive comments. But that's basic psychology. And even when you're raising a kid, they always say you tell them 3 good things and 1 thing that you want to fix. Like, you need to counterbalance, because the negative one will always have more more impact and last longer. So I'm trying to get some sort of a distance with that. But then I have to say that one of the things that I've done also is to put a limit to what I can take. And social media, some people say, oh, it's social media, you're a public representative. But yeah, I'm a public representative, but I'm a human being, and I have my limit. If you want to debate, if you want to say I'm wrong, if you want to say you don't agree, I'm happy, and I am happy to have that conversation. But if you cross that line where it's really unacceptable, that I would never let someone tell that to my face, because it's just not the way that is acceptable in terms of being aggressive, in terms of being, I don't want to name examples, but to cross that line. And then I'm like, I'm blocking you.
Okay.
I'm doing it. And it's like, and I thought about it for a few days, and I'm like, no, because this is just socially unacceptable. And I think we need to be vocal on, this is fine, this is normal, tough discussion, but this should not happen in a society, even if it's only on social media.
So I take from that a sense of balance, look at who say, put it out, but, in perspective. But I also take your point of view very well, that 1 negative comment can really ruin your day. And so you've left us with some real strategies, how to think about leadership, how to position yourself as a leader, how to be effective, how to, it's, as you've said to me, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I think we can conclude from this podcast that your leadership will continue on its marathon. And I want to thank you very, very much for it, for joining us today and sharing your insights. To our listeners, be sure to check out our podcasts and subscribe to them. We welcome your suggestions on topics and speakers for future episodes, and we will continue to move the needle as we examine the challenges facing our society. Thank you.